الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه كما يحب ربنا ويرضى أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله الناصح الأمين اللهم صل على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ومن تمسك بسنته إلى يوم الدين ثم أما بعد يا عباد الله. It is incumbent upon each and every one of us that we reflect and we contemplate and we ponder upon the meanings of the Quran, and that which will help us in reflecting and pondering upon the meanings is by knowing something from the Tafseer of those ayat that we oft recite. There's a very small surah that is small in its size and its number of ayat, but it is tremendous in its meaning. Like every other ayah and surah from the Quran, it is tremendous. It is that which, if we truly understood it, it is a life changer. It will change our lives. It will enrich our lives. It will better our lives. So, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, we would like to spend some time looking at the meanings of this tremendous surah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Al-Qaari'ah, Mal-Qaari'ah, وَمَا أَدَرَاكَ مَا الْقَارِعَةُ. Allah Jalla wa'ala, He says in this tremendous chapter, Al-Qaari'ah, Al-Qaari'ah. قال إمام السعدي رحمه الله تعالى القارعة من أسماء يوم القيامة. That Al-Qaari'ah, it is from the names of Yawm al-Qiyamah. That from the many names of Yawm al-Qiyamah is Al-Qaari'ah. The Imam rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, سميت بذلك لأنها تقرع الناس وتزعجهم بأهوالها. He says it has been named that Al-Qaari'ah, which they translate as the striking hour. It has been named Al-Qaari'ah because it will strike and thrash mankind and alarm them and terrify them and put dread and horror into them by its occurrences. But that which will take place during that day, it will put dread, it will strike and thrash human beings. So therefore it has been called Al-Qaari'ah, the striking hour, the thrashing hour. وَلِهَذَا عَظُمَ أَمْرُهَا وَفَخَمَهُ بِقَوْلِهِ الْقَارِعَةُ مَا الْقَارِعَةُ وَمَا أَدَرَاكَ مَا الْقَارِعَةُ يَوْمَ يَكُونُ النَّاسُ. The Imam, he says, and because of this, due to this, that He, Allah Jalla wa'ala, He has showed us the magnitude of this affair and how grievous and important and tremendous and heavy and weighty is this affair, with His statement Al-Qaari'ah, by the striking hour. Mal-Qaari'ah, what is the striking hour? وَمَا أَدَرَاكَ مَا الْقَارِعَةُ, and what will make you know what the striking hour is? يَوْمَ يَكُونُ النَّاسُ, it is the day that human beings, it is the day that human beings, مِنْ شِدَّةِ الْفَزِعِ وَالْحَوْلِ, it is the day that human beings, due to and because of the tremendous terrifying nature, because they'll be tremendously terrified, tremendously dismayed. It is on that day that mankind, due to them being dismayed, due to them being terrified, that they will be like كَالْفَرَاشِ الْمَبْثُوثِ. They will be like scattered moths. They'll be like scattered moths. Imam al-Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, أي كالجراد المنتشر. They will be like moths, or they will be like the locusts that spread forward. Those locusts as they come in the swarms of locusts and the like. He says, الذي يموج بعضها أو بعضه في بعض. That which you will find that they move in waves of excitement and agitation amongst each other, amongst themselves, rubbing against each other, bumping into each other, that they move in ways of agitation, ways of excitement, going here, going there, turning this way, then that way, back and then forward, right and then left. You will find mankind like this, like the farash. The farash, as the Imam he explains, he says here, حيوانات التي تكون في الليل. That this moth, it is that moth, it is from those insects that come out at night, from those nocturnal insects. يموج بعضها في بعض. They swarm together in ways of excitement and agitation. لا تدري أين توجه. And you don't know which way they're going. They're moving in swarms. Swarms that, for lack of a better term, seeming as if they make no sense. They're moving in swarms, to the right, to the left, up and then down. You don't know which way they're going. Confusion. Swarms of confusion. Lack of order and the like. وَإِذَا أُوقِدَ لَهَا النَّارُ. And when a fire is made, when that campfire or that fire that's made at the night time is made, you will find what happens to these moths. What do? تهافتت إليها لضعف إدراكها. They plunge into it. When the fire comes, they plunge into it. They rush toward it. Why is this? Due to the feebleness, due to the weakness of their understanding. Due to the weakness of their understanding, the weakness and feebleness of their comprehension, they plunge into the fire. They plunge into that which will destroy them, which will cause their demise. They plunge into it. وَهَذِهِ حَالِ النَّاسِ أَهْلِ الْعُقُولِ. And this will be the state of mankind يوم القيامة. This will be the state of mankind يوم القيامة. Those human beings who are the people of intellect, those human beings who were given by Allah Ta'ala an intellect, an aql, you will find that they will what? They will be in such a state on that day that the aql will not avail them. They will be in such a state on that day that they will be like these very simple-minded moths in swarms, moving here, moving there, having very little understanding, very little comprehension. Due to what? Due to the tremendous nature of that day. Because you find that Yawm al-Qiyamah is a day unlike any other day. You will find that Yawm al-Qiyamah, the things that will be important on that day, the things that will be the reality of that day, will be different from that which was important before that, will be different from that which people deemed as being reality before that. This will be the day that human beings, those who had intellects, will be running about like moths. This will be the day that the mountains, the Imam he says, وَأَمَّا جِبَالٍ, with regards to the mountains, as firm as they are, with regards to the mountains, as strong as they are, with regards to the mountains, on that day, كالعهن المنفوش. They will be like carded wool on that day. They will be like carded wool on that day, the untreated wool on that day. Kasuf manfush, like that wool that's untreated. الذي بقي ضعيفا جدا, the kind that is left to be weak when the wool is pulled apart, when it is in those balls and mounds, very loose, the type of which تطير به أدنى ريح, that the slightest breeze will send it flying and scattering about. This is how the mountains will be on that day. This is how the mountains will be on that day. This is a day that is not like any other day. The mountains will be like that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala elsewhere in the Quran, He tells us, وَتَرَى جِبَالٍ, and you see the mountains, and you see the mountains, تَحْسَبُهَا جَامِدَةً, and you think that they are firm, you think that they are solid. وَهِيَ تَمُرُّ مَرَّ السَّحَابِ, but they shall pass away as the passing of the clouds. They shall pass away as the passing of the clouds. Imam al-Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, ثُمَّ بَعْدَ ذَلِكَ, then after this, after they were like the carded wool, after the mountains were like the carded wool, after that, تَكُونُ هَبَاء, then they will be like dust, manshura, then they will become like scattered dust. The mountains will become like scattered dust. They will go from being like mounds of carded wool to being dust. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells us elsewhere in the Quran, وَبُسَّتِ الْجِبَالُ بَسًّا فَكَانَتْ هَبَاءً مُنْبَثًّا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells us what means. And the mountains will be ground to a powdery dust. Yawmul Qiyamah is not like any other day. This is the day that these strong mountains right now, that if you went out there and tried to headbutt the mountain, your head will be in trouble. This is that day that these mountains will be powdered up like powder, ground to dust. And they will be like floating dust particles. They will be like floating dust particles. Imam al-Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, فَتَضَمْحِلَ وَلَا يَبْقَى مِنْهَا شَيْء يُشَاهَدْ. Then they will vanish. The mountains will vanish. And there will be nothing left to be seen, nothing left to be witnessed. They will be gone. The mountains will go away. They'll be gone. Nothing left to be witnessed. فَحِينَئِذٍ, Imam al-Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, and then at that point, تَنْصُبُ الْمَوَازِينَ, then at that point, the scales will be erected. Then at that point, the scales will be erected. What is the scale of? This is a scale that will weigh the deeds of mankind. This is a scale that will weigh the abd himself. This is a scale that will be brought forward, because now things are going to be weighed. Now reality is going to be seen, because this is a day unlike any other day. This is a day that the former titles that people had in the dunya won't matter. This one was rich, this one was poor, this one was wealthy, this one was affluent, this one was miserly, this one had nothing, this one was famous, this one was infamous, this one was a nobody, this one was black, this one was white, this one was a Arab, this one was a not Arab, this one was a boy, this one was a girl, so on and so forth. None of this matters. When those scales come out, the only categories that's going to matter The only categories that is going to be is the categories of the one who is happy and the categories of the one who is miserable. This will be the categories of mankind. Imam Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, وَيُنْقَسِمُ النَّاسِ قِسْمَيْنِ. And at this point, human beings will be brought into two different categories. Nobody care if you was rich, nobody care if you was poor, nobody care if you was famous, non-famous, and the like. None of that matters anymore. None of that matters. Now what matters? He said human beings will be broken up into two different categories. As-su'ada wal-ashqiya. Those who are happy and those who are miserable. Let us reflect about this. Let us contemplate about this on that day that the mountains will be powdered to dust, when they will disappear and the scales will be brought forth. Which of these two groups do we want to be from? Those who are happy or those who are miserable? أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه فإنه هو الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وبعد. Which one is it? Do you want to be happy or we want to be miserable? And we're not talking about here in this dunya, because many things that people think lead to happiness will lead in reality to their misery. Sin, transgression will lead to misery. Intoxicants, people will tell you that they take intoxicants because it makes them feel good, but the taking of these intoxicants will result in their misery. People cheat, rob, steal, take interest, pay interest, witness interest, accept interest, and the like, thinking that it will lead to their happiness, because now they have a nice car, now they have a nice house, now they have this, now they have that, but it will eventually result in what? In their misery. In their misery. Happiness is found in obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Happiness is found in obedience to the Prophet ﷺ. Happiness is found in being a good Muslim. That's where you find your happiness, being upon the way of the Salaf. Happiness is found in the Sunnah, not in bid'ah. Bid'ah leads to misery, because bid'ah leads to the fire. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He informs us of some of the occurrences of Yawm al-Qiyamah here in this surah, so that we understand that this is a serious day. This is a serious day. This ain't no joke. So we have to remember this and take it serious. We have to utilize our lives in preparation for this day, because there is no value, no good to a life that begins and then it ends, and a person didn't benefit himself for this day. There is no benefit in a life that begins and it ends, and a person didn't worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala therein. A person didn't ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive him therein. A person didn't strive to be upon the way of His messenger therein. A person who didn't strive with his hardest to establish Tawheed therein, then there's no benefit for the life of this individual. His life was a total waste. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, فَأَمَّا مَنْ ثَقُلَتْ مَوَازِينُهُ. But for the one who his scale is heavy. What does it mean his scale is heavy? This is because his good deeds have what? Outweigh his bad deeds. His good deeds are heavier than his bad deeds. So what is the state for this one who his good deeds are more and heavier than his bad deeds. What's his situation? فَهُوَ فِي عِيشَةٍ رَاضِيَةٍ. Then he will be in a good happy life, in Jannat. He will be in the Jannah. This is for the one who what? Who his good deeds were much. How many of us have read this surah? How many of us have memorized this surah? How many of us oft recite this surah in our salawat? But are we, and have we, and are we going to be affected by this surah, so that we rush to the accumulation of good deeds, so that we increase in righteousness, from the many types of righteousness, from prayer, from fasting, from spending in charity, fi sabilillah, from calling to good, forbidding the evil, reciting Quran, so on and so forth, supplicating to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, making dhikr, remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How many of us are going to rush now? How many of us are going to rush in preparation, so that our scale of good deeds is jam-packed? Are we going to be affected? Have we been affected? Are we affected? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells us, with regards to the other person, with regards to the other group, because these, and what was mentioned, is in reference to who? To those who are happy. These are those who, their good deeds outweigh their bad deeds. These are those who will be in Jannah, those who are happy, those who are truly happy. Maybe in dunya they had some rough days. Maybe in dunya they didn't have the nicest car because they didn't want riba. Maybe in dunya they never owned a house because they didn't want riba. Maybe in dunya they didn't have the best jobs because they wanted all for Jumu'ah, because they wanted to grow their beards, because they wanted to be able to pray. Maybe it was a little rough for them. Maybe they had beans and no rice. But they're going to be happy with the true happiness that won't end. But on the flip side now, the other group, وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَفَّتْ مَوَازِينُهُ. But for the one who his scale is light, meaning that what? Because his hasanat, they did not overpower and outweigh his sayyi'at. His good deeds didn't overpower, they didn't outweigh his bad deeds. And this is because of one or two scenarios. Either because one, he was a kafir. And for the kafir, of course, his evil deeds are going to outweigh his good deeds because he doesn't have any good deeds. You understand? The kafir, that Jew, that Christian, that Buddhist, that Hindu, that Rastafarian, that Papa Sinner, and whoever from the kuffar, they don't have any good deeds. So of course their bad deeds is going to outweigh, because that's all they got. That's one scenario. The other scenario is that believer, that Muslim, who was lackadaisical when it came to doing good, but who was one who excelled in doing evil. So you will find that he comes up short. He has some good because he's a Muslim, so he has good deeds, but he came up short. He didn't have enough. He didn't have enough. He did not have enough. So now he's in trouble, because now he's subjected with the possibility of going to the hellfire to cleanse him from what he has done, and abide therein until he is cleansed from his evil, and then that Muslim will enter into the Jannah, because no Muslim will stay in hell. But believe you me, that is not a cleansing that any one of us wants. You don't want to be cleaned up by the hellfire. No, you don't want that. That's not a cleansing that nobody wants. So make sure that that scale of good is heavier with regards to the kafir, when his abode forever and ever. As Allah Ta'ala, He says, وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَفَّتْ مَوَازِينُهُ فَأُمُّهُ هَاوِيَةٌ. And for the one who his scale is light, then his abode is the hawiyah. أُمُّهُ هَاوِيَةٌ وَمَسْكَنَهُ النَّارُ. His abode will be the hawiyah, which is a pit in the fire, and he shall abide therein. And this pit is been named the hawiyah. تكون له بمنزلة الأم اللازمة. It will be for him a place that he must go. There is no alternative. There's no option. He has to go to the fire. He will stay inside of the fire. He will never be separated from the fire. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, إِنَّ عَذَابَهَا كَانَ غَرَامًا. In that verily, its torment is an ever inseparable, permanent punishment. This is what that kafir is going to get. So don't look at him thinking, but he got bling, but he got this car, he got that car, he can push a button and the top disappear, he got this mansion, he got this, he got that. Look how happy he is. His abode will be the hawiyah, a permanent, inseparable punishment. He will be truly miserable. Let him laugh. Let him laugh for a little while, for verily he will cry for eternity. The ulama, they say, وَقِيلَ, and it has been said, أَنَّ مَعْنَ ذَلِكَ, that the meaning of that his will be the hawiyah, the meaning of that is فَأُم دِمَاغُ. The here is his brain. This is what is intended by that his brain, for his brain will be the hawiyah. For his brain will be the hawiyah finnar, this pit in the fire. Allahumma inna nas'aluka jannah wa na'udhu bika min al-hawiyah. What does this mean? That it means his brain. Imam al-Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, yulqa fin nar ala ra'sih, meaning that he will be plunged, he will be thrown into, he will be slammed into the fire on his head. He will be slammed into the fire on his head. Humiliated, disgraced, because he came up short, because he didn't have any good deeds, because he wanted to disbelieve in his life. So now for that kafir is the hawiyah, forever and ever and ever. He ain't never coming out. Into there and plunged, slammed on his head, never to come out, to be burnt and tortured forever. Every time the skin is burnt, new skin is grown. And after every period, the punishment gets worse and gets worse and gets worse, and shall remain like that forever. وَمَا أَدَرَاكَ مَا هِيَ. What will make you understand what it is? وَهَذَا تَعْظِيمُ لِأَمْرِهَا. And this is to show you the magnificence of this occurrence and how awful it is. That Allah Ta'ala, He says, وَمَا أَدَرَاكَ مَا هِيَ. And what will make you understand what it is? Showing you that this is something that is great, this is tremendous. This is something that is awful. You don't want to go to the hawiyah. You don't want to see no parts of the hawiyah. What will make you understand how awful it is? What will make you understand how severe it is? Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He explains it, what the hawiyah is. Allah ta'ala, He says, Narun hamiyah, that it is the fire that is hamiyah. It is a fire. It's not like the fire on the stove. It's not like the fire from a campfire. It's not like the fire from an earthly inferno. It's not like the fire from the sun or from a bigger star, hotter star. It's not like that. So a person is thinking that, oh, it's like that type of fire. No, it's not like that. It's not like that type of fire. But even when we reflect upon the earthly fire, do you see the damage that the earthly fire does to the skin after a few seconds? Do you see the damage that the earthly fire does to the skin, to the flesh, after a few seconds? You see people with their noses and ears and lips burnt off. They weren't in the earthly fire for that long. Seconds. That's all it took to disfigure them for life. That's all it took. Now they're losing limbs and appendages and the like. Few seconds. We ain't talking about that type of fire. We're not talking about that type of fire. If it was that type of fire, then that would be enough to scare us. If it was that type of fire, that would be enough to scare us. But it's not that type of fire. وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا هِيَ. What will make you understand what it is? Narun hamiyah. It is a fire that is tremendously hot. That is a nar. Hamiyah. Tremendously hot. Its heat has been increased. Its intensity, its veracity has been increased over the fire of this dunya. Over the fire of this dunya. How much? Double, triple? No. 70 ضعفا. 70 times. Multiplied 70 times hotter than the hottest fire in this existence. So much so that the Prophet ﷺ tells us that the fire, the hottest fire in this existence, seeks refuge in Allah from the fire of the Akhirah. The hottest fire right now seeks refuge in Allah from the fire of the hereafter. Because there lies a fire that is not like any other fire. There lies a created being, meaning the hellfire, who loves to punish those who are wicked, who loves to destroy those who enter into it. Therein lies a fire the likes of which we never want to know the reality of it. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us of those who never know the reality of the hellfire, but those who only understand in theory the hellfire, but never those who know firsthand what the hellfire is. Nastajiru billah minha. We ask Allah protection from it. وأقيموا الصلاة.